Everyone thought Javon Merrick was just a quiet kid. Shy, maybe, withdrawn, probably. But no one expected that one tiny gesture, barely a flick of his hand, would completely change what the court believed about his life. He was only 12, small for his age, dark skin, always tugging at the sleeves of his oversized hoodie like he wanted to disappear inside it. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. Honestly, he barely blinked. You could sit across from him for hours and still walk away not knowing what he was thinking. That morning in the Toledo courtroom, Javon entered like a shadow, silent, slow, almost invisible. A court officer tried to give him a reassuring pat as he guided him to the table. Javon didn't move, didn't flinch, just Saturday. Across the room were Gerald and Lynette Bosley, his current foster parents. Late 40s, picture perfect on paper, church-going, daycare owners, no criminal record. The kind of couple people trusted with children. But that morning wasn't about resumes. It was about what couldn't be typed into a report. There was a chill in the courtroom, not from the air conditioning, but the kind that creeps in when truth is hiding somewhere and nobody knows who it's going to embarrass when it shows up. Javon had been alone since his mother, Marquita Merrick, passed away during a botched surgery 2 years ago. No father listed. No relatives came forward. In just 14 months, he'd been placed in 3 different homes. The Bosleys were his latest. No bruises. No late-night hospital visits. But teachers had started to take notes. They said he flinched when spoken to, rarely ate at lunch, spent too long staring out of windows. Nothing that screamed abuse, just patterns that whispered something wasn't right. Still, CPS didn't have enough to intervene. Until today. Judge Russell Cranmore had seen his share of courtroom drama, known for his low tolerance of theatrics and his sharp eye for nonsense. But Javon wasn't putting on a show. He sat beside his court-appointed guardian, staring at his own fingers like they were more trustworthy than anyone in the room. Javon, the prosecutor, began gently. Do you remember what happened last month at home? You can tell us anything. Nothing. Not even a blink. Do you feel safe with the Bosleys? Silence. He's not ignoring you, the guardian said softly. He just doesn't speak unless he has to. Judge Cranmore leaned forward. Doesn't speak or won't. He can talk. He's just shut down lately. The judge sighed. We're not going to get very far like this. That's when the side door opened. A woman in a beige vest walked in, holding the leash of a golden retriever. Calm, alert, tail swaying gently. This is Oscar, the woman said. He's a licensed therapy dog. We thought he might help Javon feel more at ease. No objections, just quiet hope. Oscar was guided to the boys' table. The handler clipped the leash to her belt and sat nearby. Oscar laid down quietly, his breathing soft and steady. The room settled. Javon didn't smile, but he moved, just barely. A flick of his pinky, a subtle twist of his wrist. 2 soft taps of his thumb against his thigh. Oscar's head rose. His ears perked. Not like before, but like he was listening to something only he could hear. His body went still. His eyes locked on the boy. It wasn't random. It wasn't cute. It was intentional. The judge noticed. So did the prosecutor. Did he just signal the dog? Judge Cranmore asked. The handler looked uncertain. That wasn't one of our standard cues, but Oscar's responding. Oscar was sitting upright now, tail flat, chest stiff, focused, like something invisible had passed between him and Javon. No barking, no growling, just alert. Javon stayed still, calm, too calm for a child in court. The handler's brow furrowed. His alerting, she murmured, more to herself than anyone. To what? The judge asked. I'm not sure, she said, stepping closer. Oscar crept forward. Slowly, carefully, he nudged his nose against Javon's knee. The boy didn't look up, but his thumb tapped again. Once, twice, then a pause, then one final tap. Oscar lay down, rigid, not relaxed, his body pressed tight to the boy's leg. His eyes didn't close. His body didn't ease. He was protecting, guarding, listening. The room was silent. What does that mean? The prosecutor asked quietly. Oscar is trained to detect signs of trauma. He used to work with veterans. The handler explained, "Those taps, that's not fidgeting. That's a learned signal." "You're saying the boy trained him?" "I don't know, but Oscar's reacting like he understands it. And dogs like him don't fake that kind of reaction." Javon still hadn't said a word, but the whole courtroom was listening. Across the room, Gerald Bosley shifted uncomfortably. Lynette shot him a look. Tense. Tight. But nobody was paying attention to them anymore. All eyes were on the boy. And the dog. "Javon," the judge asked gently, "where did you learn that signal?" The boy's lips parted. Just barely. "My grandfather," he whispered. So soft, it was almost nothing. "I'm sorry. Say that again." The judge leaned forward. This time, louder, clearer. "My grandfather taught me." And just like that, the silence had meaning. The boy wasn't broken. He was speaking, in the only language he trusted would listen. "My grandfather taught me," Javon whispered. The guardian beside him leaned in gently. "When did he teach you that?" "Before he died," the boy replied. "When I stayed with him." The therapy dog handler crouched a little closer, her voice soft and respectful. "You trained dogs with him?" Javon nodded. "And the signal you gave Oscar just now, what did that mean?" Javon looked down at the dog beside him. "That I need help," he said quietly. "But I can't say why." The room went completely still. No murmurs, no shifting, just breathless attention. Then Oscar stood, without any command. Without a sound, the golden retriever walked, slowly and deliberately, across the courtroom floor. Every step was cautious, alert. He stopped just 1 foot from Gerald Bosley. Lynette's hand shot out to grip her husband's arm, but Gerald didn't move. He looked like a man caught in headlights. Oscar growled. Low, steady, focused. The kind of growl that comes from instinct, not confusion. The handler's eyes widened. "He's reacting to something," she said. "Something specific." Gerald raised his hands defensively. "This is absurd. The dog's just agitated. Maybe he's tired. Maybe the kid messed with him. He's never done that before." But the handler didn't back down. "He's never done that before because he's trained not to. I've worked with Oscar for 3 years. He only growls when he feels something's wrong. It's a trained alert." Judge Cranmore's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Bosley, have you ever encountered this dog before?" Gerald's voice was tight. "Of course not." The prosecutor leaned in. "Javon, why do you think Oscar's reacting to him?" The boy didn't speak, but his fingers moved. A quiet series of taps and motions. The same coded signals as before. The handler turned, watching. Then she asked gently, "Javon, who are you afraid of walking into the kitchen?" He looked up. No hesitation this time. "My Uncle Gerald." The silence that followed wasn't just heavy, it was shattering. 3 people in that courtroom had just realized this wasn't about a failed foster placement. It was about something bigger. Something hidden behind paperwork and buried in bureaucracy. Gerald Bosley wasn't just some random foster parent. He was family. Distant, maybe, but blood. The kind of relative who slips through the cracks when case files don't connect and background checks don't ask the right questions. The guardian's voice was quiet, tight. "Javon, how long have you known he was your uncle?" Javon shrugged slightly. "Since the first night." He said, "Your mama never gave me no respect. Now I got you." The judge's jaw tensed. "Did you tell anyone that?" Javon looked him in the eye. "You think they believe me?" They didn't believe her either when she called him out. That hit hard. The judge leaned back slowly, processing. The handler turned to the guardian. "We need to pull Oscar's training records. If Javon really helped train him with his grandfather, there'll be logs. It'll prove everything." "Do it," the judge ordered. Still seated, still silent, Javon sat as if the world had finally tilted back in his favor. He wasn't scared anymore. Just relieved, like someone had finally heard the language he'd been forced to speak alone. "Gerald used to lock me outside," Javon said quietly. "Winter, summer, didn't matter. Said boys needed to be tough. Said crying was for girls." "Did Lynette know?" the guardian asked. She just turned the TV up. Said she didn't hear anything. The handler swallowed hard. He was signaling Oscar this whole time. That's how he stayed safe. The judge tapped his pen thoughtfully. Your grandfather taught you how to train dogs. Was it just Oscar? No, Javon replied. All kinds. PTSD dogs, therapy dogs, scent detection. How old were you? 7. And you remember all the commands? Javon nodded. They're like songs in my head. Judge Cranmore looked directly at the boy. Can you show me one more? Javon turned to Oscar. 2 taps, a rub along his knee, then a small point under the table. Oscar immediately moved, calm and exact, crawling under the table and curling at the boy's feet, head resting gently on Javon's shoes. What did you ask him to do? The judge asked softly. Guard me. Silence again. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was loaded with truth. The guardian leaned in. Javon, do you know why Gerald didn't want you talking to anyone? Javon gave a tiny nod. Because if I did, people would start asking questions. Did you ever try? She asked. Javon lifted his head. I stopped when no one listened. The judge glanced down at the file in front of him. How many dogs like Oscar are in the state program? Less than 50, the handler replied. And the ones trained by Wilbur, Javon's grandfather, are considered elite. That explains Oscar's discipline. Oscar hadn't moved an inch. He stayed beneath the boy, unmoving, as if he understood this moment had waited long enough. Bailiff, the judge said, bring Mr. Bosley back in. Minutes later, Gerald returned, this time flanked by 2 officers. Judge Cranmore didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Mr. Bosley, were you ever present during Wilbur Merrick's training sessions? Gerald snorted. A long time ago, before he cut me off. Why did he cut you off? Gerald's tone turned bitter. That old man had opinions. Always favored his daughter. Never thought I was good enough. Did you ask to foster Javon, or were you selected? Gerald blinked. Does it matter? The judge leaned forward. It matters when it looks like you manipulated the system to gain access to a child you were never fit to raise. But this decision wasn't fueled by anger. It was made by a judge who had just learned how to listen in a language most people never take the time to understand. Judge Cranmore's voice was calm but final. Mr. Bosley, based on the evidence presented, your connection to the child, your past with the Merrick family, and the clear signs of emotional abuse, I am ordering an emergency review of your foster certification effective immediately. Gerald stepped forward, furious. You can't just. I can. The judge interrupted. And I just did. Oscar let out a low, rumbling growl. Not loud, not violent, but enough to hush the entire room. Gerald Bosley took a step back. Not out of fear, out of exposure. For the first time all morning, the bluster faded from his face. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked caught. I'd suggest you don't test that dog, the handler said, stepping forward, her voice cold, steady. 2 officers moved in behind Gerald. One gently placed a hand on his shoulder. You'll need to come with us while the emergency motion is filed, one officer said. Gerald didn't resist, but he didn't leave quietly either. This is insane, he muttered. That boy doesn't speak for months, and now suddenly he's a golden witness. Judge Cranmore didn't even blink. He doesn't need to talk, he replied. He communicated more clearly than anyone in this room. The door clicked shut behind Gerald, and in that moment, Javon exhaled, not out of fear, not in defeat, but like someone finally letting go of a weight they were never meant to carry. His shoulders dropped, slow and quiet, like relief had finally been allowed into the room. The judge turned back toward the boy. Son, he said gently, I'm going to ask you something important. You don't have to answer unless you want to. Javon looked up. Do you feel safe staying with anyone connected to Gerald? The boy shook his head. No. Would you be open to a temporary placement? Someone from your grandfather's network? Maybe someone who works with dogs? A small nod. Not hopeful, not desperate, just honest. The handler stepped forward. I know someone, she said. Trained under Wilbur for 6 years. No children of her own, but licensed and certified in trauma care. Her name's Ramona Ellis. I can call her today. Do it. Judge Cranmore nodded. I'll sign the placement order before sunset. The guardian leaned over and placed a gentle hand on Javon's shoulder. That sound okay with you? Javon looked down. Oscar was sitting calmly beside him, tail giving a soft thump against the floor. Yeah, he said, his voice clear. Okay. Just outside the courtroom, a quiet crowd had gathered. Law clerks, legal aides, a few off-duty officers. They hadn't come for drama. They came because word had spread, not about chaos, about courage. Inside, Judge Cranmore sat silently for a moment, his eyes scanning the now half-empty room. He wasn't one for speeches, but something in him stirred. I've been on this bench a long time, he said quietly, long enough to know the law doesn't always speak with clarity. But today, this courtroom didn't need 1,000 words. It just needed someone willing to listen. The handler blinked back tears. The guardian nodded solemnly. Even the bailiff stopped writing for a moment. Let's adjourn, the judge said, and have this transcript reviewed by every family court judge in Lucas County. No redactions. Oscar stood, with a slow, steady step. He placed his paw gently on Javon's foot, one last silent gesture, then turned toward the exit. Javon stood with him. No yelling, no TV-style drama. Just a quiet walk toward a hallway where something better finally waited. Near the back of the courtroom, a young intern whispered, "What just happened?" The clerk beside her didn't look away from the door as she replied. A child spoke in the only language he knew, and someone finally listened. But that wasn't the end. It was the beginning. At Ramona Ellis's home, miles away from the courtroom and the noise, Javon didn't speak much during those first days. He didn't have to. Ramona, a retired military canine handler from Parisburg, knew the value of silence. She didn't crowd him. She didn't lecture. She gave him a room of his own, stocked the fridge with whatever she guessed kids might like, and set up a thick blanket beside his bed for Oscar, who hadn't left his side once. That first night, she simply handed Javon a folded quilt, pointed down the hallway, and said, "Bathroom's there. Porch lights on. Sleep easy. No questions. No expectations. Just space." It wasn't some magical healing. He still flinched when doors opened too fast, still checked behind him before entering a room. But he didn't lie awake. And in the morning, for the first time in a long time, he got up on his own. Ramona found him in the backyard, tossing a bowl for Oscar, using those same quiet signals. Tap, flick, nod. Oscar moved like the rhythm was already familiar. She brought out 2 mugs. "Coffee for her. Cocoa for him. You trained him good," she said. Javon shrugged. "Wilbur taught me. Years ago. We ran drills in this busted-up warehouse with no heat. He could turn any mutt into a service dog." Javon didn't smile. Not fully, but the corner of his mouth lifted, just slightly. Ramona noticed, and she didn't say a word. "You don't have to talk," she added, "but I'm here when you're ready." He paused, then asked, "Why'd you say yes?" Ramona looked up at the sky like she was searching for the right answer. "Because someone gave me a shot when I came back from Afghanistan and couldn't walk into a grocery store without shaking. You deserve the same." Javon sat with that, let it settle. Then he said, "People don't listen." She sipped her coffee. "They are listening now." In the weeks that followed, more truth surfaced. Old reports, discarded complaints from Gerald's past co-workers, notes that never made it into any official file. A system full of cracks, until one boy and one dog revealed what had been hiding in plain sight. Judge Cranmore requested a full review of the foster agency's approval process. 2 caseworkers were reassigned. Lynette Bosley was questioned for willful neglect. And Gerald? He was charged with multiple counts, child endangerment, emotional abuse, and 1 count of perjury. The story hit local news. But it wasn't Javon's face on TV. It was Oscar's. The headline read, "Therapy Dog Helps Expose Abuse. Boy's Silent Signals Lead to Breakthrough." They got it wrong, of course. It wasn't just a dog. It was a child who had waited for someone, anyone, to treat his silence like it mattered. At Ramona's place, things weren't perfect. Javon still didn't talk much at school, still flinched at Ray's voices, but he smiled more, ate full meals, slept through the night, and one Friday afternoon he pulled out an old notebook and started writing. At the top of the first page, he scribbled, "How to train dogs who listen without words." Ramona saw it. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. When Judge Crammell retired later that year, he took only one case file with him. Not the biggest case of his career. Not a murder or corporate scandal. Javon's. He kept it as a reminder that justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it comes from the quietest corners, the places we almost forget to listen. So if there's one thing to remember from Javon's story, it's this. When someone goes quiet, don't assume they have nothing to say. Maybe they're just waiting for the right kind of listener. If this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, some of the most powerful voices are the ones we almost missed.